The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow over the chaos unfolding in the sleek, glass-walled conference room. Aria's hands trembled as she clutched her laptop bag tightly to her chest. Her heart pounded so loudly that it drowned out the murmurs of the executives seated around the table, faces she had worked with for years, faces that now refused to meet hers. "You're making a mistake," Aria said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. She stood at the head of the table, where just moments ago she'd been presenting the culmination of 2 years of relentless work, Etherflow, the revolutionary data management system that would redefine how their company operated. It was fast, efficient, and secure, a masterpiece born from sleepless nights, endless coding marathons, and sacrifices she could barely remember anymore. But instead of applause or even acknowledgement, they handed her an envelope. Thin. Final. Dismissal papers. "It's not personal, Aria." Marcus, the CEO, finally spoke up, his tone clipped but laced with something akin but far worse than pity, indifference. "We've decided to go in a different direction." "Different direction?" she echoed, incredulous. The words tasted bitter on her tongue. "This is my system. My code. Every line written by me. And you're firing me because, what? You think someone else can do better?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding eye contact. "It's about scalability, cost efficiency." "Don't insult me," Aria snapped, cutting him off. Her composure cracked slightly, but she didn't care. These people owed her more than lies wrapped in corporate jargon. "You know damn well this system will save you millions. What's really going on here?" Silence stretched across the room like taut piano wire. No one answered. They didn't need to. Aria already knew. This wasn't about performance or strategy, it was about control. About erasing her name from the narrative entirely. For all their talk of innovation, these suits couldn't stomach the idea of owing their success to someone who wasn't part of their inner circle. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. Anger wouldn't help her now. Not when every second counted. Slowly, deliberately, Aria unzipped her laptop bag and pulled out a small metallic device no bigger than a thumb drive. The private hardware key, the only thing standing between them and complete access to Etherflow. "I built this," she said, holding the key aloft like Excalibur. "And without it, your precious system is nothing but lines of useless code. So tell me, Marcus, what exactly are you planning to do next?" For the first time since the meeting began, there was genuine fear in his eyes. Fear and calculation. He leaned forward, steepling his fingers together. "Be reasonable, Aria. Hand over the key, and we'll negotiate terms." "Negotiate?" she laughed bitterly. "After everything? No. You don't get to negotiate anything. You made your choice when you handed me those papers." With that, she turned on her heel and walked out of the room, leaving behind stunned silence. Outside, the city roared to life as dusk settled over its skyline. Neon lights flickered against rain-slick streets, reflecting the turmoil brewing within Aria. She hailed a cab and climbed inside, clutching the hardware key so tightly that its edges dug into her palm. Her mind raced, cycling through emotions too intense to process fully: betrayal, anger, disbelief, and beneath it all, a spark of determination. They thought they could discard her like yesterday's trash. But they underestimated her. Underestimated what she was capable of. Her phone buzzed incessantly in her pocket, each notification another attempt by the company to reach her. Ignoring them, she stared out the window as the cab navigated through traffic. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a plan began to form, a dangerous, audacious plan that might just turn the tables on everyone who doubted her. By the time she reached her apartment, the initial shock had worn off, replaced by cold resolve. Kicking off her shoes, Aria set the hardware key on her desk and powered up her computer. As the screen lit up, she opened a secure folder filled with encrypted files, backups of every version of Etherflow, meticulously documented and protected. Over the years, she'd learned to be cautious, always covering her tracks, always preparing for the worst. And now, the worst had happened. But Aria wasn't afraid. If anything, she felt alive in a way she hadn't in months. Maybe years. This was her moment to take control, to show them exactly what they lost when they chose greed over gratitude. She spent the next several hours poring over the system's architecture, identifying vulnerabilities and opportunities. By morning, she had a clear path forward. First, she needed to sever any remaining ties with the company. That meant disabling remote access protocols and encrypting critical components of the system further. Then came the tricky part, finding leverage. Etherflow wasn't just a tool, it was a lifeline. Without it, the company would hemorrhage resources trying to rebuild something comparable. And if they wanted it back, they'd have to come crawling to her. On her terms. With a satisfied smirk, Arya drafted an email to Marcus. Short. To the point. Professional yet dripping with irony. Dear Marcus. As per our recent discussion, I wanted to clarify that Etherflow remains under my sole ownership until such time as mutually beneficial arrangements can be negotiated. Please note that unauthorized attempts to bypass encryption measures will result in irreversible data corruption. Looking forward to hearing from you soon. Best regards. Arya. She hit send before second-guessing herself. Almost immediately, her phone started ringing again. Predictable. Let them panic. Let them realize the depth of their mistake. Over the following days, Arya retreated into her work, fine-tuning the system and reinforcing its defenses. Sleep became optional, meals sporadic. Her apartment transformed into a fortress of monitors, cables, and half-empty coffee cups. Yet amidst the chaos, she found clarity. Purpose. Then came the call she'd been waiting for. Arya, Marcus's voice crackled through the speaker, strained and desperate. We need to talk. Do we? She replied coolly, leaning back in her chair. About what? You know damn well what. We can't function without Etherflow. Our clients are breathing down our necks. Production is grinding to a halt. And whose fault is that? She asked sweetly, savoring the weight of his silence. When he didn't respond, she continued, I assume you've read my email. Shall we discuss terms? There was a long pause. Finally, Marcus sighed. What do you want? What I deserve, Arya said simply. 3 times your original offer. Plus full ownership rights to the system. Oh, and public acknowledgement of my contributions. Take it or leave it. Another pause. Longer this time. She could practically hear the gears turning in his head, weighing options that weren't really options at all. Fine, he growled eventually. But if you try anything. I won't, she interrupted smoothly. As long as you hold up your end of the deal. When the call ended, Arya allowed herself a small smile. Victory tasted sweeter than she'd imagined. But this was only the beginning. There was still so much to do, so many pieces to move into place. Little did they know, Arya had plans far beyond mere revenge. Plans that involved not just reclaiming what was rightfully hers, but building something entirely new. Something unstoppable. Weeks passed in a blur of negotiations, legal documents, and clandestine meetings. True to his word, Marcus delivered on the financial compensation, though begrudgingly. Public acknowledgement proved trickier. Pride was a stubborn beast, after all. But Arya didn't press too hard. For now, the money was enough. More than enough. With her newfound wealth, she rented a modest office space downtown, assembling a team of trusted allies, former colleagues who shared her vision and understood the value of loyalty. Together, they began developing a new iteration of Etherflow, one designed not for corporate greed but for innovation and accessibility. Yet even as she poured her energy into this project, Arya couldn't shake the feeling that her journey was far from over. The world had shown her its ugliest side, but it had also revealed its cracks she intended to exploit. Opportunities hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone bold enough to seize them. One evening, as she reviewed progress reports with her team, inspiration struck. What if Etherflow wasn't just a tool for businesses? What if it could serve individuals too? Empower them? Protect them? The possibilities were endless, limited only by imagination and ambition. Excited, Arya sketched out rough ideas on a whiteboard, her team chiming in with suggestions and feedback. For the first time in months, she felt truly hopeful. Truly alive. But hope, as she'd learned, was a double-edged sword. Just as quickly as it lifted her spirits, it also reminded her of the stakes. The risks. The enemies she'd made along the way. Unbeknownst to her, forces were already mobilizing in the shadows. Forces determined to reclaim what they believed belonged to them. Forces willing to do whatever it took to silence her, for good. And when they came for her, Arya would be ready. The first sign that something was wrong came late one night, as Arya sat alone in her office reviewing encrypted logs. The building was quiet, save for the hum of servers and the occasional distant rumble of traffic outside. Her team had left hours ago, leaving her to work undisturbed, a luxury she rarely indulged in but desperately needed tonight. She leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. For weeks, everything had seemed to fall into place. The new iteration of Etherflow was progressing faster than expected, her team's morale was high, and Marcus hadn't so much as sent a passive-aggressive email since their last negotiation. It felt almost too easy. And then, the lights flickered. At first, Arya dismissed it as a power surge, common enough in this part of the city. But when the lights dimmed again, accompanied by a faint buzzing noise from her computer monitors, unease prickled at the edges of her mind. She glanced at the security feed displayed on one of her screens. Everything appeared normal, empty hallways, locked doors, no movement. But something wasn't right. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she accessed the system diagnostics. That's when she saw it, a series of unauthorized access attempts targeting her server network. Someone was trying to breach her defenses. A cold knot tightened in her stomach. This wasn't just some random hacker looking for vulnerabilities. Whoever it was knew exactly what they were after. And they weren't playing around. Arya quickly initiated countermeasures, rerouting data streams and activating decoy protocols she'd installed months earlier as a precaution. If anyone thought they could waltz into her systems unnoticed, they were about to get a rude awakening. As the intrusion intensified, alarms began flashing on her screen, one after another, each more urgent than the last. Whoever was behind this attack was good. Better than most. They bypassed firewalls with surgical precision, probing deeper into her infrastructure with every passing second. But Arya was better. With practiced efficiency, she isolated critical components of Etherflow, locking them behind layers of encryption only she could unlock. Then, using a custom-built script, she traced the source of the attack. It took mere minutes before an IP address surfaced, a dead end naturally, routed through multiple proxy servers scattered across the globe. Still, it gave her a starting point. Her phone buzzed on the desk beside her, startling her momentarily. She picked it up, expecting yet another spam call or automated message. Instead, the screen displayed a single word, unknown caller. Against her better judgment, she answered. Who is this? There was a pause, followed by a low, gravelly voice. You've made quite a mess, haven't you? Arya's blood ran cold. She recognized that tone, not the voice itself, but the calculated menace behind it. This wasn't some petty rival or disgruntled former colleague. This was someone far more dangerous. I don't know who you are, she said evenly, though her pulse quickened. But if you're calling to threaten me, you're wasting your time. The laugh that greeted her response sent shivers down her spine. Oh, we're not here to threaten Ms. Last name. We're here to negotiate. Negotiate? She echoed, incredulous. By hacking into my systems? You have a funny way of starting conversations. We prefer to think of it as leveling the playing field. The voice grew colder, sharper. You've taken something that doesn't belong to you. Something very valuable. Hand it over, and we'll walk away. Refuse and well, he let the sentence hang ominously. Arya clenched her jaw, gripping the phone tighter. I don't respond well to threats. And I sure as hell don't negotiate with criminals. Criminals. The man chuckled darkly. Careful, Ms. Last name. Labels can be misleading. All we want is what's rightfully ours. Surely you understand the concept of ownership. You mean like how you tried to steal Etherflow from me? She shot back. Funny, I thought ownership meant actually doing the work. This time, there was no laughter, only silence. When the man spoke again, his tone had shifted, laced with barely concealed fury. You're playing a dangerous game. One you can't win. Watch me, Arya replied, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Then, without waiting for a response, she ended the call. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the phone down. Whatever facade of calm she'd maintained during the conversation crumbled the moment she disconnected. Who were these people? And why did they want Etherflow so badly? Before she could dwell on those questions further, her attention snapped back to the ongoing attack. The intruders were relentless, hammering at her defenses with increasing aggression. While her countermeasures had slowed them down, they hadn't stopped them entirely. Worse still, she noticed anomalies in the code, a subtle shift in patterns suggesting they were adapting to her tactics. Arya's mind raced. She couldn't keep fighting them indefinitely. Eventually, they'd find a way through. She needed to act decisively, and fast. Her eyes darted to the hardware key sitting on her desk. Without hesitation, she grabbed it and plugged it into her laptop. Within seconds, she accessed a hidden subroutine buried deep within Etherflow, a self-destruct protocol designed to erase all traces of the system in the event of a catastrophic breach. It was a drastic measure, one she'd hoped never to use. But desperate times called for desperate actions. Just as she prepared to activate the protocol, a notification popped up on her screen, a video feed. At first, she thought it was another security camera angle, but then she realized with growing dread that it wasn't footage from her own cameras. It was live video streamed directly to her device. The image showed a dimly lit room filled with rows of servers humming softly. In the center stood a figure clad in black, face obscured by a mask. Beside them lay an open laptop displaying lines of code eerily similar to her own. Then the figure raised their hand, revealing a small metallic object gripped tightly between gloved fingers. Another hardware key. Arya froze, her breath catching in her throat. How was this possible? She'd built the original key herself. It was supposed to be unique, irreplaceable. Yet there it was, gleaming ominously under the harsh fluorescent light. A text box appeared beneath the video feed, words materializing one letter at a time. We have what you need. And you have what we want. Let's talk. For a moment, Arya sat motionless, staring at the screen. Her mind churned, piecing together fragments of information, searching for answers. Had they somehow reverse-engineered her design? Or worse, had someone betrayed her? Whatever the truth, one thing was clear, this wasn't just about reclaiming Etherflow. There was something bigger at play here, something she didn't fully understand. Slowly, deliberately, she unplugged the hardware key and slipped it into her pocket. Then, with trembling hands, she typed a single word into the chat box. When? Within moments, a reply appeared. Midnight. Warehouse 17. Come alone. Arya read the message twice, committing every detail to memory. Midnight. Warehouse 17. Alone. It sounded like the setup for a trap, and likely was, but she had no choice. If she wanted answers, if she wanted to protect everything she'd worked for, she had to confront them head-on. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, Arya prepared herself both mentally and physically. She armed herself with tools she trusted implicitly, a portable hard drive containing backup files, a secondary encrypted device loaded with decoy data, and of course the original hardware key. When the hour finally arrived, she stepped out into the cool night air, her resolve hardened like steel. The streets were eerily quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against her ears and made her hyper-aware of every sound. The scrape of her boots against pavement, the distant hum of streetlights, the occasional bark of a dog echoing in the distance. Warehouse 17 loomed ahead, its silhouette jagged against the moonlit sky. Shadows danced across its rusted metal walls, casting eerie shapes that seemed alive in the darkness. Arya hesitated only briefly before pushing open the heavy door and stepping inside. The interior was cavernous, filled with stacks of crates and machinery cloaked in shadow. Somewhere deep within the space, a single overhead light flickered weakly, illuminating a small circle of concrete floor. Standing beneath it was the masked figure from the video feed. Well done, the figure said, their voice distorted through a modulator. You're punctual. And you're predictable, Arya countered, stepping closer but keeping her distance. What do you want? The figure tilted their head slightly, as if amused. Straight to business. Admirable. Very well. Let's make this simple. Give us the key, and we'll leave you alone. Arya laughed bitterly. That's rich, coming from someone who spent weeks trying to destroy me. We're offering you a chance to walk away unscathed, the figure replied, their tone sharpening. Don't throw it away. Unscathed. Arya echoed, incredulous. You broke into my systems, threatened my life, and now expect me to hand over the one thing standing between you and total control? You must think I'm stupid. No, the figure said calmly. We think you're smart. Smart enough to realize you're outnumbered. Outmatched. Arya's gaze narrowed. If you wanted to intimidate me, you should have tried harder. For a moment, neither of them moved. The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to choke on. Then slowly, the figure reached into their jacket and pulled out a tablet. With a few taps, a holographic display sprang to life, projecting images and documents into the space between them. This is what happens if you refuse, the figure said, gesturing to the display. Every secret you've ever kept. Every vulnerability you've patched. Exposed. To everyone. Arya stared at the hologram, her heart pounding. They weren't bluffing. Somehow, they'd uncovered things even she hadn't realized were vulnerable. But instead of fear, a strange sense of clarity washed over her. She understood now, this wasn't just about ether flow. It was about power, control, domination. And Arya wasn't about to let anyone take that away from her. Without warning, she activated the decoy device in her pocket, flooding the warehouse with electromagnetic interference. Lights flickered wildly, plunging the space into near-total darkness. Chaos erupted as alarms blared and machinery groaned under the sudden strain. In the confusion, Arya bolted, weaving through the maze of crates and shadows. She didn't know where she was running to, only that she had to get out, alive. Behind her, shouts rang out, footsteps pounding against the concrete floor. They were close. Too close. But Arya had one last trick up her sleeve. As the shouts grew louder and the footsteps closed in, Arya's mind raced. She knew she couldn't outrun them forever, not in this labyrinth of shadows and steel. But she also knew something they didn't. Every step she took was leading them exactly where she wanted. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out the portable hard drive containing her backup files. With a swift motion, she activated a pre-programmed failsafe embedded within it, a beacon tied directly to etherflow. The moment it went live, her system would begin broadcasting an overwhelming surge of data packets, flooding their devices with corrupted information. It wasn't destruction, it was precision chaos, designed to neutralize without causing permanent harm. The first wave hit almost instantly. Lights flickered violently, then died completely, plunging the warehouse into total darkness. The hum of machinery sputtered and ceased, leaving only the sound of panicked voices echoing through the cavernous space. "Cut the signal," someone shouted, their voice laced with panic. "Find her." But Arya was already moving, guided by years of memorizing escape routes and anticipating worst-case scenarios. Clutching the original hardware key tightly in one hand, she navigated the pitch-black maze with practiced ease, slipping past her pursuers like smoke through cracks. She reached the far end of the warehouse just as the second phase of her plan kicked in. Hidden speakers, installed during her reconnaissance days, crackled to life, projecting distorted audio loops that mimicked approaching sirens. To anyone inside, it would sound like law enforcement was storming the building. Pandemonium erupted. "What the hell is going on?" A voice barked, barely audible over the cacophony. "It's a setup," another yelled back. "Fall back." Their confusion bought Arya precious seconds. She slipped through a side exit, emerging into the cool night air. Behind her, the warehouse buzzed with activity as her pursuers scrambled to regroup. But they were too late. By the time they realized the sirens were fake, she'd be long gone. Hours later, Arya sat in a safe house miles away from the chaos, watching news alerts scroll across her laptop screen. Reports of a mysterious power outage at Warehouse 17 dominated local headlines, accompanied by grainy footage of masked figures fleeing the scene. Authorities were calling it a cyber attack, though no group had claimed responsibility yet. A small smile played at the corners of her lips. Let them wonder who was behind it. Let them scramble to pick up the pieces. They'd never trace it back to her. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her. Picking it up, she saw a text from Marcus. "What did you do?" She chuckled softly before typing a reply. "Survived." Then she powered off the phone and set it aside. Whatever lingering ties she'd had to her old life were severed now. And honestly, she felt lighter for it. In the weeks that followed, Arya focused all her energy on rebuilding, not just herself, but the future she'd envisioned. Using the funds from her settlement with Marcus's company, she founded a non-profit organization dedicated to democratizing access to advanced technology. Her new iteration of Etherflow became its cornerstone, offering individuals and small businesses tools once reserved for corporate giants. Word spread quickly. People marveled at how intuitive and powerful the system was, unaware of the battles fought to bring it into existence. For Arya, that anonymity was its own reward. She didn't need recognition or accolades, knowing she'd made a difference was enough. One evening, as she stood on the rooftop of her new headquarters overlooking the city skyline, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The scars of betrayal still lingered, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they served as reminders of how far she'd come, and how much stronger she'd become because of it. "Arya," a voice called from behind her. Turning, she saw Elena, one of her closest team members, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this." "Thanks," Arya said, accepting the cup with a grateful smile. Together, they leaned against the railing, watching the city lights twinkle below. "You know," Elena said after a while, "you've built something incredible here. Something that'll change lives." "I hope so," Arya replied quietly. "That's all I ever wanted, to make things better." Elena studied her for a moment, then grinned. "Well, mission accomplished. Now what?" Arya laughed softly, taking a sip of her coffee. "Now? We keep going. There's always more work to do." And with that, she turned her gaze back to the horizon, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Not out of obligation, but out of choice. Because for the first time in a long time, she was exactly where she belonged. The city stretched endlessly before her, alive with possibility. And somewhere deep within its sprawling expanse, ether flow hummed softly, carrying the promise of a brighter tomorrow, for everyone.